Imagine waking up to find someone selling your land, your legacy, your sanctuary right under your nose, with a smile and a clipboard, as if they owned the waves themselves. This is the story of a beachfront battle where one man's resolve, a padlocked gate, and a viral video took down an HOA empire built on lies. She was pointing at my land like it was hers, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat and fake pearls, gesturing grandly as she told the couple beside her, "Of course, you can build a guest house right there by the dune. HOA approved." I stood behind the dune gate, clutching a greasy wrench, squinting under the sun, wondering if I'd stumbled into a real estate-themed Twilight Zone. She didn't notice me until I clicked the padlock shut and said, loud enough for her potential buyers to hear, "That's funny, because that's my land you're selling, and you're standing on it without permission." Her smile froze, stiff as a bad Botox job. The man beside her coughed. The woman whispered, "Wait, this isn't your property?" And that's when I saw it, a flicker, a twitch in Karen's left eyelid, the first crack in her delusion. I had no clue how far she'd taken this scam, but I knew right then I wasn't just going to reclaim my land. I was going to bury her in it, legally and thoroughly, one lawsuit at a time. The sand was mine. It had always been mine. Grandpa willed me this beach lot when I was 19, back when I thought land just sat there, quiet and undisturbed, like an old book on a forgotten shelf. I never imagined you'd have to fight tooth and nail to keep what was yours. Life got busy. Years slipped by. The small lot, nestled between two properties that had ballooned into massive vacation homes, sat untouched. I returned this summer to finally build my off-grid surf shack, only to find Karen, yes, her actual name, running the neighborhood HOA like her own monarchical fiefdom. I didn't know her then. I only knew she'd sent me a letter 2 weeks prior, claiming my unauthorized structure materials would be removed from community land. I'd assumed it was a clerical error. Now I knew better. The couple she'd been sweet-talking didn't linger for explanations. They hurried off, eyes down, as if they'd stumbled into a family spat at a barbecue. Karen stayed silent at first, squinting at me like she was calculating whether she could convince me I was hallucinating. "Oh, you must be the nephew or something," she said. "This lot hasn't been used in years. The HOA repurposed it into green space. It's on the new map." "The one you printed yourself?" I asked. I pulled out the county deed and my grandfather's will, both laminated, because I sensed today would get sweaty and absurd. "This is my land. It was never repurposed. And you can't sell what you don't own." Her jaw tightened. She tried to laugh. "There's been some confusion. You can't just gate off part of the community beach like this." "The gate's on my land," I said. "And I can do whatever I want on it, including pressing charges." I paused, ensuring she saw the phone in my hand, its camera app already rolling. Her posture stiffened, as if I'd drawn a weapon. That's the thing about people like Karen, they bark loudly until you show your teeth. Then they either run or double down on their performance. Karen, of course, chose the latter. She marched up to the dune gate, fingers jabbing the air, lips twitching with dramatic fury. "You're intimidating a board member of the Homeowners Association," she declared, as if that granted her diplomatic immunity. I glanced at the padlock, clicked it once more for emphasis, and said, "Then I hope the board has good lawyers." She stormed off, dialing someone on her phone. I caught the words trespasser and vandalism before her voice faded into the wind. I wasn't worried. My name was etched into the deed like granite, but I had no idea how far she'd taken her fantasy of control. The next morning, I woke to a fresh HOA notice of violation stapled to my wooden post, fluttering like a flag of war. It claimed my lot was officially reclassified under HOA management due to extended abandonment and now considered part of the common beachfront preservation zone. I blinked, read it twice, then laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Preservation zone? That land was dry sand, weeds, and an old rusted fire pit. I walked 2 blocks to the HOA office, a stucco building adorned with seashells glued around the doorframe like a kindergarten craft project. Inside, a bulletin board displayed a glossy map. On the newest version, my lot was labeled HOA Recreational Commons. I looked at the woman behind the desk. "Hi, who drew this map?" She squinted. "Mrs. Karen did. She's our HOA president and cartographic coordinator. Cartographic coordinator, I repeated. You mean she just made this up? Oh no, the woman said cheerfully. She used Google Earth and everything. That's when it hit me, Karen wasn't just drunk on power. She was building a fantasy kingdom, and my land was her crown jewel. She'd scrubbed my lot from public records on HOA documents, likely assuming I'd never return. I'd seen scams before, but this was neighborhood-level colonization with printouts and binders. By noon, I was in a lawyer's office downtown. His name was Rick, a man who wore sandals in court and a tank top with a pelican on it, but he knew land law better than any suited shark. She forged zoning maps, he said, sipping coconut water. Oh, this will be fun. Let's make her famous. That afternoon, we filed a cease and desist, a legal warning shot. Then I returned to the lot and installed a camera pole at the fence's edge. I didn't care if it looked like a dystopian beach movie set. It was mine, and if Karen wanted to keep playing Queen of the Coast, she'd do it under surveillance. That night, surfers 2 lots over held a bonfire. I joined them, shared a drink, and laughed. One of them, a laid-back guy named Spence, said, "Bro, you're the guy fencing off the turf Karen uses for her yoga retreats, huh?" Yoga retreats? I asked. Oh, yeah, he said. Every summer, she charges people, says the HOA owns that land and rents it for events. We all thought it was legit. My hand tightened around the bottle. She hadn't just lied, she'd been profiting off my land for years. That's when I knew this wasn't a simple boundary dispute. This was a takedown, not for revenge, but because Karen had declared war on reality, and I had the receipts to prove it. I gazed at the dark waves, stars dancing above the tide, and promised myself she'd regret ever pointing at my sand. By sunrise, Karen fired her next shot. I woke to a knock, not a polite knock, but an entitled tap 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 followed by an impatient voice, "You need to come outside right now." I stepped out of my camper barefoot, shirt half-buttoned, and faced a short man in a fluorescent HOA vest, wielding a clipboard like a weapon. Behind him stood Karen, arms crossed, her face twisted into a theatrical mask of exaggerated disappointment. "This is your final warning," the clipboard man said with forced authority. "You're in violation of HOA Code 4B, unauthorized perimeter obstruction on shared community beachfront." I blinked. "You mean the fence on my private property?" He didn't flinch, just repeated the sentence verbatim, like a malfunctioning customer service bot. "What's your name?" I asked. "George," he replied. "Are you a licensed enforcement officer?" "I'm a compliance volunteer," he said proudly. Karen smirked behind him, like a general watching her pawn march to war. "Well, George, you're standing on private land delivering fake violations. If you don't leave in the next 10 seconds, I'm calling the sheriff to report this as harassment." His eyes flickered. Karen leaned in. "We have the authority of the Homeowners Association," she said. "We can escalate this." "Please do," I replied. "Then we can escalate it in court." With that, I stepped back and slammed the camper door, leaving them in the wind like rejected soap opera extras. By noon, Karen had called an emergency HOA meeting, conveniently excluding me. Fortunately, Spence the surfer had an ally on the board who tipped me off with the time and location. I arrived 15 minutes early, not for punctuality, but to watch Karen squirm when I walked in. The meeting was in the community clubhouse, a space that looked like a Pottery Barn catalog exploded inside a beach shack. Bamboo chairs, fake orchids, and a sign-in sheet that read HOA leaders only. I signed my name anyway, strode past the folding table of lemonade and stale crackers, and sat in the second row, where I belonged. Karen's face when she saw me was pure television, her mouth twitched, her heel caught on the welcome mat, and for a moment, I thought she might fake a fainting spell to dodge the confrontation. But Karen was too stubborn for such theatrics. She stormed to the front, clapped her hands, and declared, "Let's begin." The meeting started with small talk about turtle-safe lighting and recycling bins until she announced, "We've had some confusion surrounding the commons area between lots 17 and 19, which we've designated a preservation and wellness zone." My hand shot up. "Lot 18, I said. "That's the one in the middle, and it's not a commons area." It's mine, deeded to me by my grandfather, and I have the legal paperwork to prove it. Karen's smile held, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of anxiety. She gestured to a stack of maps beside her. These documents were prepared by our cartographic coordinator. You're what? I asked. Is that an elected position? A man in the back, short, round, sweat pooling at his collar, nervously raised his hand. I just helped with the printer. I didn't draw anything. Karen glared at him like he'd committed treason. I stood, pulled the original deed from my folder, and held it up for all to see. This land has never belonged to the HOA. Your maps are invalid. You altered documents to deceive potential buyers and host events for profit. That's fraud. The room went silent. A woman near the snack table dropped a cookie. George, the compliance volunteer, coughed into his elbow. Karen, sensing the momentum slipping, tried to rally. This gentleman, she said, her tone dripping with disdain reserved for insects and traffic court defendants, has not participated in HOA activities for years. His presence here is disruptive and without purpose. I'm a landowner, I said. This affects me directly, and if you think ignoring me will make this lawsuit go away, you're in for an expensive surprise. A nervous laugh rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Wait, what lawsuit?" Karen's expression tightened just shy of rage. She wrapped the meeting in record time, citing legal complications, and exited without answering a single question. I followed her out. You didn't think I'd come back, did you? I said. You thought this was just another abandoned lot you could add to your empire. She spun around. You're ruining the community, she hissed. You're the one dragging everyone into court. I'm the one who owns the land, I said. You're the one trying to sell it. She had no comeback, just a trembling lip and the sound of seagulls mocking her from above. The next few days were quiet, at least on the surface. Karen didn't appear at the beach. No fake tours, no meditation classes on stolen sand. But the silence felt too calculated, too polite. I knew she was planning something. Then it came. On the fifth day, a glossy flyer landed on every door in the neighborhood: community improvement vote, reallocation of abandoned parcels for public good. Buried in the fine print was a proposal to seize my lot through an HOA majority vote and designate it for permanent public meditation use. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my sandwich. The audacity was impressive, but legally absurd. The HOA had no jurisdiction to reallocate privately deeded land. Still, Karen was banking on ignorance and social pressure. I called Rick, sent him a photo of the flyer. He replied with 2 words, "Oh, perfect." That evening, I posted a video to the neighborhood group chat. Just me, standing in front of my lot, holding the original deed, smiling like a man who'd read the last page of a thriller and knew the ending. Hi, neighbors, I said. You might have received a flyer suggesting this land is up for a vote. Just a heads up, it's not. This is private property, and anyone who tries to use or alter it without consent will be legally liable. Thanks. I ended with a wink. Within minutes, the video had 45 likes, 6 heart emojis, and 1 furious comment from Karen demanding its removal for hostility. I pinned it to the top of the group. Karen called a second emergency meeting. Fewer people showed. Word had spread, and questions were brewing. The HOA treasurer, a sleazy guy named Marty with a comb-over and a nervous smile, pulled me aside before it began. Off the record, he said, I didn't know she was selling it. She just said it was underused space. If I'd known it was deeded, I never would have signed off. You didn't ask? I said. You're the treasurer. It was a Wednesday when Karen made her next move, and true to form, she didn't come quietly or sensibly. At exactly 8:14 a.m., a man in a security uniform with mirrored sunglasses and a clipboard knocked on my camper door with the fake urgency of someone who thought he was the law. His name tag read HOA Enforcement Division, impressive only if you didn't know the HOA had no legal enforcement division. He announced in a booming voice that he was there to conduct an inspection and verify compliance with community usage policies. I leaned against the doorway, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, squinting at him. "You realize you're standing on private land, right?" I said. He looked confused, like someone handed him a script without explaining the plot. "This area has been marked for community wellness use under HOA directive," he recited. "The structure on this land is not in compliance." "You mean the fence around my own property?" I asked. "And the camper I legally parked here 3 weeks ago with a county permit?" He faltered, glanced at his clipboard, and said, "You're being uncooperative, and you're being trespassed." I replied, "Leave now, or I'll call the real police and let them explain how property rights work." He stood still for a moment, unsure whether to bluff further or retreat. Eventually, he chose an awkward backward walk, like he feared I'd hurl a lawsuit at his back. Karen, of course, watched from the street corner, arms folded, sunglasses too large for her face, muttering into her phone before vanishing behind a cluster of beach grass. That moment pushed me to go on the offensive. I texted Rick to prepare the official lawsuit. By noon, the papers were printed, notarized, and tucked into a bright blue folder labeled Property Fraud and Civil Misrepresentation, Lot 18. I drove to town, picked up 2 extra copies, and printed a large aerial photo of my lot with boundary lines outlined in red to erase any doubt. Then I returned to the beach, stood behind the fence Karen had mocked, and waited. She didn't keep me waiting long. Around 3 p.m., her SUV rolled up, parking halfway on my sand, tires crunching shells like an invasion. She stepped out in a white blouse, clutching a clipboard, her battle armor, and began directing 2 older women behind her. "We'll start the garden bed there," she said loudly, pointing to the center of my lot. "The meditation rock circle will go to the left of the gate." "Karen," I called, holding the blue folder like a sword. She turned, already faking a smile, ready to play this off as a charming misunderstanding. "We've already spoken about this," she said with patronizing sweetness. "The board voted to reclaim this parcel for community use." "Here's the lawsuit," I interrupted, walking toward her slowly. "You've got 30 days to respond. I'm suing you personally and the HOA as an entity for attempted theft, fraud, and public misrepresentation." Her mouth hung open, like a bad theater actor forgetting her lines. "You can't do that," she said. "I absolutely can," I replied. "And I have." She glanced at the folder like it was radioactive. "This is intimidation," she said, raising her voice for the women to hear. "This is harassment." "No, this is legal recourse," I said. "And your car is currently trespassing." "I'm allowed to park here," she said weakly. "This is HOA land." "Then you won't mind if I make some improvements," I smiled, turning back toward the dune. Spence was already there with 3 posts, a hammer, and a roll of chain-link fencing. We worked like men possessed. Each post driven into the ground felt like an exclamation point in a letter Karen refused to read. The fencing was ugly, temporary, and impossible to ignore. Within 20 minutes, we'd enclosed her car inside my property, a neat rectangle of metallic justice. She didn't scream at first, just stood frozen, staring at the fence like it might vanish if she blinked hard enough. But when I snapped the lock on the gate and stepped back, she found her voice. "You fenced in my car," she shrieked. "You absolute lunatic." "No," I said calmly. "I fenced off my land. Your car just happens to be on it." "I'm calling the sheriff," she yelled. "Please do," I said. "I'd love to show them the papers." She stormed off, dialing so fast she nearly dropped her phone. Spence, still holding the hammer, laughed so hard he had to sit on the sand. What Karen didn't know was that 2 surfers from the next lot had recorded the whole scene on their phones. One ran a local surf lifestyle account with over 500,000 followers. Within an hour, the clip was uploaded with the caption, "HOA Queen tries to steal beach lot, gets fenced like her ego." By nightfall, it had spread across platforms, racking up thousands of likes, laughing emojis, and comments like, "I would die for this man," and "Justice has never sounded so crunchy." Karen did not take kindly to becoming a meme. That night, the HOA group chat exploded with confused members asking what was happening and why Karen's car was caged like a zoo exhibit. She tried to spin it, claiming I'd staged everything for social media clout, but the video was too raw, too real, too perfect. Her tone, her arrogance, her shriek, it was all captured in HD. The next day, the sheriff himself knocked on my camper door, an older man named Hal with a gray mustache and a sunburned neck. "Got a complaint about a vehicle being held hostage," he said with a drawl that could calm a storm. I handed him the paperwork. He reviewed it, scratched his chin, and walked around the fence. "So, she parked here after you built the fence?" he asked. "No," I said. "She parked here knowing it was private land. I fenced it after." "Well," he said, "it's your land. Looks like everything's in order. But just for the record, she's going to raise hell about this." "She already did," I said. "And she'll keep going until someone tells her no." Hal chuckled. "Mind if I take a picture? My wife saw that video and thinks it's the funniest thing this side of the bay." I told him to knock himself out. Karen refused to move her car, claiming towing it would be an act of aggression and that she was being bullied by a man with a superiority complex. But no one believed her anymore. The moment she became a laughingstock, her spell broke. Neighbors who once followed her like a weather vane in a hurricane began ignoring her emails. The HOA chat, once moderated like a royal court, was flooded with questions about her decisions. The vice president sent me a private message asking to review the legal documents himself. Marty messaged me a gif of a sinking ship. It was beautiful. Karen re-emerged with the subtlety of a marching band crashing a funeral. The fence hadn't just wounded her pride, it had pierced the myth she'd built around herself, the unshakable illusion of control she clung to like a sequined life raft. So, at the next HOA meeting, she didn't just return, she arrived with the air of a disgraced monarch desperate to reclaim her throne through sheer volume and theatrical scorn. The clubhouse buzzed with tense electricity, chairs filled with whispering neighbors clutching agendas like shields. I sat near the back, arms folded, silent, watching Karen take her place at the head of the table, pretending nothing had changed, as if her SUV weren't still caged under floodlights 2 blocks away. "Let's bring order to the meeting," she said, lips tight, voice straining to command respect that no longer existed. She shuffled her notes, cleared her throat dramatically, and launched into a tirade about inappropriate neighbor behavior, obstruction of community harmony, and unauthorized media sharing that put the HOA at reputational risk. She never said my name, but the room turned when she mentioned the fence. I gave them a smile that invited questions. Karen clicked a remote, projecting a neighborhood map onto the wall. It had been altered again, my lot now outlined in yellow, labeled disputed territory, legal review pending. I stood, held my phone high, and tapped play. The screen lit up with footage of Karen's real estate pitch on my land, her words crystal clear, and of course, "This can all be yours." HOA approved. The room fell silent, save for her voice spinning promises she had no right to make. "That was taken without consent," she snapped, panic blooming in her eyes. "Then maybe you shouldn't have said it in public," I replied. "Especially on land you don't own. I have the original deed here, again." I held up the document, same as always, but now the crowd was listening. The spell was broken. Marty coughed awkwardly, shifting in his seat. A board member whispered to another. Karen's grip on the remote tightened, her knuckles pale. "He's exploiting legal loopholes," she said. "This isn't about property, it's about power, about controlling the narrative." "Karen," Marty interrupted, sweating through his shirt, "can we talk about the fact that you hosted paid events on land that wasn't HOA property?" Karen turned slowly, the heat of scrutiny pressing down like the midday sun. "Those were approved," she said too quickly. "Show me the vote," I said. "Show me one recorded meeting where the HOA officially seized private land. Show me signatures. Show me anything." Karen flipped through her binder, pages suddenly blank, her fingers trembling. "This isn't a courtroom," she said. "No," I answered, "but the next step will be." The room shifted visibly, tangibly. People who'd once nodded along with her every word now exchanged glances that said, "Is she serious? Did we let this happen? How far did this go?" Karen lost control of her voice, closing the session early, citing stress and a need for clarity. As neighbors filtered out, a woman in her 60s named Marcia approached, holding a crumpled flyer. "She passed these out last month," she said. It says she's collecting donations for a community gazebo on your lot. We all chipped in. Did anyone get receipts? I asked. Marcia shook her head. She said she'd handle it. I thanked her, scanned the flyer, and added it to my growing collection of Karen's greatest hits. The next morning, I visited the county zoning office and requested a full review of permits and applications filed under the HOA's name. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I mentioned Karen. "You're not the first to ask," he said. "There have been questions." That's when the cracks deepened. I went home, logged into the HOA's shared Google Drive, once board eyes only, and found a folder titled Land Adjustments, set to private, but with preview thumbnails accidentally visible. Inside were scanned emails, draft contracts, and a letter to an overseas development firm promising beachfront lots pending internal reclassification. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just making power plays for neighborhood dominance, she was trying to sell multiple lots, mine included, to someone outside the country. I downloaded what I could, took screenshots of the rest, and called Rick. "We might be looking at something bigger," I said. "Like what?" he asked. "Like a long con wrapped in HOA bureaucracy," I replied. "She's moving land quietly without proper title transfers, hoping no one notices until it's too late." "I've seen this before," Rick muttered. "Old school real estate flip scams. They pretend it's abandoned, push it through a shell vote, line up a backdoor buyer, and claim the board approved it. People rarely sue because it's complicated." "Well, we're not most people," I said. "We have footage, records, witnesses, and now motive." Rick agreed to file a motion for discovery and collect formal depositions. Meanwhile, I kept the fence locked and started receiving thank you notes from neighbors. Some were annoyed at first, frustrated by the drama, but as the truth leaked one email, one clip at a time, sympathy shifted. A surfer from the West Lot made a meme of Karen's SUV in the fence, captioned "Welcome to Jurassic Park, HOA Edition." It got over 3,000 shares by dinner. Karen was unraveling. She marched through the neighborhood, flyers in hand, trying to explain it all away, blaming me, Marty, even Russian hackers, claiming the documents were tampered with. She accused Spence of being a spy for a rival developer. Her desperation reached cartoonish proportions, and I almost felt bad. Almost. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue, inviting every neighbor who'd ever nodded at me, waved from a porch, or offered a bottle opener. The lot glowed with string lights and paper plates, laughter echoing across land that had been drenched in tension. Neighbors shared stories about Karen that raised my eyebrows. She'd find someone for leaving a garbage can out 2 hours late, hosted a ticketed dog show on my lot 3 years ago. "We thought it was sanctioned," they said. "How many people paid?" I asked. No one knew, but the list grew. The match struck when I found an email buried under neighborhood complaints and HOA meeting invites I hadn't opened. The subject line was vague, possible lead on Karen's development schemes, but the body was explosive, a forwarded message chain, timestamped and signed, between Karen and AC Holdings Limited. Spanning 8 months, it began with inquiries about land value and zoning, escalating to proposals for covert transition of beachfront parcels and payment plans disguised as community improvement grants. My lot was listed by name, a silent acquisition pending community vote, bundled with 2 others labeled inactive or orphaned in HOA records. Except they weren't. One belonged to Lorraine, hospitalized out of state, and the other to Gus, a retired veteran who didn't use email and hadn't noticed Karen marking his plot as undocumented. I sat rereading the thread, stomach churning, the scale of her ambition unfolding like an oil slick. This wasn't just about me, it was deliberate theft through bureaucracy, targeting the sick and elderly who trusted the system because they couldn't fight it. She was doing it with fake paperwork and real money. I printed every email, highlighted lines about flipping lots before formal reassignment, and stapled them into a packet so thick it barely fit my satchel. Then I walked 3 blocks to Gus's door. He answered in slippers, rubbing his eyes, but when I showed him Karen's map, something fierce returned to his gaze. "That witch tried to find me for wind chimes," he said. "Now she's trying to sell my land." I nodded. "She's promised it to an overseas developer. Offer accepted, pending vote." "She never asked me," he growled. "That's because she never intended to. Gus wasn't tech-savvy, but his garage filing cabinet held every HOA letter and property record. We sat at his workbench, matching old boundary maps to new ones, noting where Karen had shifted lot lines, even renaming one property to sound like a public park. She wasn't just bold, she was methodical and good. But now she was caught. I brought the packet to Rick. He flipped through it in silence for a full minute, then stood, grabbed his phone, and said, "Press." By nightfall, the story broke, not a viral meme, but an investigative report by a local news station, Beachfront Betrayal, How One HOA President Redefined Land Theft. It aired at 6 o'clock, complete with maps, footage, and dramatic reenactments with poorly cast actors. The point landed. Karen was exposed. My phone exploded with calls and texts from neighbors, former board members, even a man who'd dated Karen years ago, thrilled to see her dethroned. The HOA chat descended into chaos. Marty, seeing the writing on the wall, announced an emergency board meeting, inviting all homeowners. He called it a chance to clarify miscommunications, but everyone knew it was damage control. The meeting was standing room only. Karen arrived late, sunglasses on indoors, her face locked in the expression of someone who'd lost control but still pretended to drive. She walked to the front like it was a stage, nodded at the cameras, yes, the press was there, and opened with the most delusional sentence I'd heard all year: "There has been a coordinated campaign to distort the truth. Certain individuals have fabricated documents and manipulated videos to incite fear." I held up my phone, not a video this time, but a recording, Karen's voice, clipped from an email voicemail to her assistant: "If we push it through before anyone checks the paperwork, the sale will go through clean." Her eyes darted like a deer hearing gunshots. "That's out of context," she stammered. "That was edited. I was talking about landscaping." "No," Marty said, stepping forward, sweating through his shirt. "You were talking about Gus's lot. You emailed me about it last fall." "You knew," someone yelled. "I thought it was legit," Marty shouted back. "She said it was a community redevelopment grant. I didn't know she was flipping it for profit." The room erupted, shouting, papers flying. Karen backed away from the podium, searching for an exit that didn't exist. The vice president tried to restore order, but it was too late. The floodgates had opened. The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, not because anyone called, but because he'd seen the news and wanted to witness what he called community drama with legal potential. He stood in the back, arms folded, watching Karen argue her way out of every accusation. "They're twisting my words," she said. "This is political. I'm being targeted because I believe in order and structure." "You're being targeted because you tried to sell other people's land," I said. "That's not politics. That's crime." Karen cracked, screaming in front of everyone, "You think this is justice? You embarrassed me. You ruined my career." "You ruined it yourself," I said. "I just held up the mirror." Her voice dropped to a hiss, "You're not better than me. You just had more time." Then she pushed through the crowd, shoving past the press, sunglasses askew, blouse wrinkled, every inch of her unraveling in real time. But the story didn't end there. As Karen fled the clubhouse, cameras followed, capturing something beautiful: her car, still fenced, still locked behind the gate she'd ignored. Someone had hung a handmade sign on the chain link, Exhibit A. The footage caught her face as she read it, her fists clenching, then her primal, wordless scream, a perfect echo through the neighborhood and across the internet within hours. The news leaned into the spectacle, the saga of an HOA queen dethroned by her arrogance and a man with a fence, a camera, and a sharper sense of humor than any ordinance. The next day, the county land board launched a formal audit of every parcel Karen had reassigned in 5 years. Rick confirmed the civil case had escalated, now including potential criminal charges, document forgery, wire fraud, unauthorized use of HOA funds. Gus called to thank me, saying he'd buy a new mailbox with the money saved from HOA fines. Lorraine's niece said her aunt cried when she heard someone fought back. And the fence? I left it up, not because I needed it, but because it had become a symbol. The courtroom smelled of old wood, cheap coffee, and consequences. Karen sat at the defendant's table in a beige blazer 2 sizes too tight, flanked by a lawyer who looked dragged from a golf course, unsure if this was civil or criminal. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with wire-rimmed glasses, sat behind a stack of case files dwarfing her nameplate. I took my seat across the aisle, Rick on one side, a folder thicker than a phone book on the other. The gallery was packed, neighbors, reporters, Spence in a Hawaiian shirt that screamed bad bet. Marty had been subpoenaed, along with 2 former board members and the county zoning clerk. Every seat was filled. This wasn't just a land dispute, it was a community reckoning, a trial spiraling from a padlocked gate into a referendum on power, arrogance, and how far someone could stretch authority before it snapped. The clerk called the case, and the judge wasted no time. Karen's lawyer stood, delivering a speech so vague it evaporated midair, claiming my lot was in question, the HOA acted in good faith, and any ownership confusion was an unfortunate administrative misunderstanding. The judge stared at him like he'd explained algebra with interpretive dance. Rick stood next, landing a precise blow. He presented the deed, notarized and dated, then the zoning maps, altered documents, and emails, one after another. The courtroom projector clicked forward, a slideshow of shame. Karen's words glared from the screen, quotes about moving parcels before anyone notices and seizing the momentum of silence. The audience murmured, a storm gathering in the rafters. Rick ended with the surf video, Karen's car, the fence, her scream accusing me of a crime. The silence when it finished was louder than any outburst. Karen's lawyer pivoted, claiming the video was out of context, that she was provoked, thought the lot was abandoned, and acted to preserve the neighborhood's aesthetic integrity. The judge raised an eyebrow. And that required selling it to an overseas developer? The lawyer stammered. Karen's face turned a shade found only in bad paintings and panic attacks. She was unraveling, and everyone saw it. Then came the witnesses. Marty took the stand, sweating like he'd picked the wrong team too long. He admitted Karen asked him to sign blank approval forms, said votes weren't necessary, and suggested avoiding disconnected owners. He paused and said, "I didn't know what she was doing at first, but when I did, I didn't have the guts to stop her." "That's on me." The judge nodded, silent. Marcia testified next, holding up the gazebo flyer, pointing to its false claims. "She took money from me," she said, voice steady. "Lied to me. That land wasn't hers to beautify." Spence was called, mostly for recording the video. Asked why he filmed it, he shrugged, "You just know a meltdown when you see one starting." Then the kicker, Rick called Karen to the stand. Her lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him so fast it felt like a slap. Karen walked up slowly, adjusting her blazer, hair clipped tightly, as if containing what she couldn't say. She swore to tell the truth. What followed was a controlled demolition. Rick asked simple questions. Did she alter maps? Host paid events? Receive compensation for lot transactions? Karen dodged, spun, wove. But Rick was patient, handing her copies of her own emails. When she denied them, he played a voicemail she'd left Marty. "I already promised the lot. I just need to get it off his hands legally." Her voice echoed. She blinked twice, said, "That was a joke." No one laughed. Rick leaned in. "Do you often joke about fraudulent land transfers?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "I think I'm prepared," Rick replied. "Something you clearly weren't." The judge called a recess, but the damage was done. Karen had lied under oath, contradicted her witnesses, and handed us the final nail for her professional coffin. After lunch, the judge delivered the civil verdict. The HOA was guilty of unlawful land misrepresentation, Karen personally liable for fraud, defamation, and abuse of authority. She ordered restitution for fake community projects, nullified all unauthorized reclassifications, and banned Karen permanently from holding any HOA administrative role in the state. Criminal charges were forwarded to the district attorney. Karen sat frozen, hands folded too tightly, as if bracing for a storm she didn't understand. When the gavel fell, the room exhaled, some clapped, others shook their heads. Justice arrived like the tide, quiet, persistent, unstoppable. Outside, news vans circled like gulls. A reporter shoved a mic in my face, asking what I'd do with the lot now. I looked past them at the sand, the fence still standing, the gate open like a healed wound. "I'm going to build," I said. Not just for me, but for the people she tried to silence. Someone asked what I'd name the house. I didn't hesitate. Due process. Laughter rippled. Even the sheriff smiled. Karen was escorted to a separate car, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses, every frame caught by cameras. She wasn't famous anymore, she was a cautionary tale, a headline carved in beach sand and bad decisions. That night, the neighborhood threw a party, not formal, just chairs dragged into yards, music spilling from windows, stories traded like cards at a campfire. Gus came. Lorraine's niece too. Spence brought tacos. Marcia danced. The air felt lighter, the HOA's years-long tension evaporating in one evening. The next morning, I took down the fence, piece by piece, pulling posts, rolling up chain link, reclaiming the space for what it was meant to be, a quiet retreat, not a battlefield. Neighbors helped. Someone brought lemonade. The SUV was towed, the driver leaving a note, "Thanks for the viral fame." The sky glowed pale gold the morning they removed Karen's nameplate from the HOA office wall, a simple brass slab beneath President, Beachview Shores HOA that had hung for 6 years. People had walked past it like it was gospel, giving her voice weight, her threats teeth. Now it came down with a screwdriver's twist and a clink into a cardboard box, no ceremony, no speech, just a janitor doing his job while 2 board members watched, unsure whether to clap or pretend they hadn't let this happen. Marty stood nearby in an oversized sweater, scrolling his phone, stealing glances at the blank spot on the stucco wall where Karen's empire once perched. She wasn't there to see it fall, holed up inland, per rumor, tangled in legal proceedings and PR firestorms, her lawyer scrambling to soften potential criminal charges while she insisted she was misunderstood. No one believed her anymore, not after the emails, footage, town hall meltdowns, and the court transcript that hit the HOA website and spread like a celebration. The legend of the woman who tried to sell other people's land became a local myth, passed around with new embellishments weekly. Some said she'd fled the state, joined a monastery, or was applying at a landscaping firm where zoning laws wouldn't be questioned. I didn't care where she went. What mattered was what she left, a cautionary tale etched into a neighborhood that had finally woken up. I spent the next week rebuilding, not the whole property, not yet. I wasn't ready for walls or foundations. I started with a deck, a flat square of treated pine and driftwood trim facing the ocean, open to the breeze and waves crashing against rocks. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, a place to sit barefoot, drink coffee, and forget lawsuits, schematics, or HOA notices. Neighbors stopped by to help, not because I asked, but because they wanted to. Marcia brought lemonade and gossip about the new interim board president, a former school principal with a no-nonsense stance on power tripping. Gus hammered nails like he was exorcising something, then said he'd installed a new mailbox and dared the next board to touch it. Spence played music from a portable speaker, joking that his viral surf account was now monetized thanks to Karen's meltdown. I told him he owed me a burger. He said he'd name his next dog after me. We called it even. The deck became a gathering spot before it had furniture. People brought folding chairs, snacks, beach towels, not to protest or argue, but to laugh, to talk. The space, long used as leverage in Karen's kingdom, felt sacred in its ordinariness. I watched kids chase seagulls, neighbors rediscover beach corners they hadn't walked in years, and realized how deeply people crave a place that feels theirs, even for an hour. At sunset, someone brought sparklers. Another night, homemade cookies. It wasn't a party or a protest, it was something better. It was normal. Then the news crews returned. A national morning show filmed a follow-up, From Fence to Freedom, the beach battle that went viral. Their van, too large for our tiny street, parked as they asked me to speak from the deck. I agreed, feeling it was the final punctuation on a sentence too long. They mic'd me up, asked about land rights, community strength, standing up to a bully with a title. I gave rehearsed answers, polished and clear. But when the reporter asked, if you could say one thing to Karen now, what would it be? I paused, considered being clever or cold, then said, you should have asked first. The crew went quiet, nodded, and packed up, their van lumbering away like a circus tent leaving a field that never wanted it. The HOA didn't die, but it changed. The new board held an open-air meeting on my lot, surrounded by lawn chairs and citronella candles. The tone shifted, less control, more conversation. The old agenda gave way to real feedback. People spoke without fear. Marty tried to speak, but the room asked him to listen, and he did. The board repealed Karen's zoning changes, refunded her bogus project donations, and passed a resolution: no land could be reclassified without owner consent and 2/3 HOA approval. It wasn't perfect, nothing is, but it was progress. I built a small wooden sign at the lot's front, where the gate once stood: welcome. No fences, no locks, no territorial claims. A statement: you're allowed here if you respect what sharing means. Some asked if I'd ever put the fence back up, just in case. I said no. The fence did its job, not to stay, but to mark a moment, a boundary of principle. It kept out the lie, held up the truth, and stepped aside when the truth no longer needed defending. One evening, as the sun melted into the ocean, painting the water in molten bronze, I sat alone on the deck with a cold drink and an empty mind. No court dates, no angry letters, no phantom footsteps on the sand. Just warm, real silence. In the distance, laughter carried on the wind, kids playing, maybe one pretending to be a lawyer, villain, or hero. I smiled, not from victory, but from the absence of pressure. No noise, no tension, just the clean piece of a fight finished. Later that week, an envelope slid under my door: no return address, no name. Inside, a single page typed in small, careful font. It didn't apologize or beg. It simply said, "You won. But we both lost. Don't let the next person be me." I didn't recognize the handwriting. Didn't need to. I folded it, slipped it into my notebook, and never spoke of it again. Some lessons are meant to be framed, others felt quietly, like waves receding into a shore finally free to breathe. I stood once more on the edge of the land I'd defended, not just with facts and law, but with resolve, and whispered to no one, "It's over." Then I walked inside, turned off the porch light, and let the night fall without fear.